Also, I kind of like that. I may keep it there. Any questions about my backstory, any questions about the evolution of The Last Paradise, any questions about my resources and how I choose to write, this video has everything. This is the everything video. General literary backstory in terms of what I read growing up and why I loved it. Lemony Snicket and Cornelia Funk, these are just two authors that to me don't seem to have anything in common, but when you look at the themes in their stories, Inkheart and Series of Unfortunate Events respectively, there's a near devotion to the written word and the art form that storytelling is. And so ingraining that in myself very early on was vital to the person that I became today. Other vital things: Mysterious Benedict Society gave me a love of puzzles in stories. Spiderwick Chronicles, obvious reasons, I love a little bit of whimsy. High Society and the Gallagher Girls by Ally Carter literally made me the woman I am today. I still, like, those series are my Roman Empire, but mostly it was fan fiction. So all of that has led me here. There were other things, don't get me wrong, but those were the big ones. I found Jane Eyre in senior year of high school, and Jane Eyre changed my fucking life. I wrote a lot and I read even more, but it's important to note that of all the classes that I took, especially for creative writing, none of them had to do with novel writing. I thought I would go on and pursue an MFA in creative poetry writing, and I applied in the middle of the pandemic and that did not work out. So I took classes in short story, hated it. Screenwriting, didn't like it. Playwriting, absolutely not for me. Creative nonfiction was an area that I really flourished in, but mostly it was poetry. And because I hated short story and screenwriting and playwriting that I thought writing a novel was just going to be something that wasn't for me. So I started to pursue more poetic things, imitation classes, and I took an independent study, and we'll get back to that in a minute. The reason that I'm telling you this is that a lot of people think that you have to have a degree in order to write a novel, and I'm telling you that I have a degree in English literature and creative writing, and I did not learn how to write a novel. I did not learn how to write a novel. A senior seminar class, which is the class that you have to take right before you graduate, it was based in sci-fi and fantasy, which I lucked out because the semester before me was, I can't remember, the Canterbury Tales. They were covering the Canterbury Tales, and I was like, that's not, I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed for spring semester, and then spring semester I got sci-fi and fantasy. So that was wonderful and lovely and everything to me. I got to study Neil Gaiman and Stephen King on a closer level than I'd ever been able to evaluate before, and my ending paper, my seminar, argument regarded how fantasy relies on othering the feminine to survive. It turned into a larger conversation about misogyny and sexism and its place in literature and society, and yeah, but I really liked writing that paper. I would not have wanted to write about the Canterbury Tales. No offense to anyone who likes the Canterbury Tales, they are not for me. So this semester I went to Barnes & Noble to find a book to read for fun for the first time, because I was starting to engage with book talk on my TikTok page. And I ended up finding, it was a friend's suggestion, House of Salt and Sorrows by Aaron A. Craig. This book awakened a beast within me that had not been fed in so long, and it was angry. It was so mad that I hadn't fed it in years, and I started to read for fun again. But in the higher classes, when you get to workshop and you get to bounce ideas off of other people, there was nothing like that for me. Leaving that kind of environment and being on my own with all of my own thoughts and no one to bounce them off of, I didn't really know what to do with myself, and I started getting these really weird fucking dreams. And then sometime in July, I think it was the 18th or something like that, I had a dream about The Last Paradise. And then, well, I had a dream about the images, and then I asked, whoever is up there, I was like, if this is supposed to be something that I need to pursue, you need to be more clear next time. And then I woke up 3 days later and I had the plot. So being a writer on TikTok, especially in the early stages, is very discouraging, because there are so many people out there being like, this is what you don't need to do. Here's what you need to avoid. Here's how you need to do this. And there are 86,000 videos out there, more, definitely more, about how to not write a novel, and not a single fucking video telling you how to do it. Just diving into this process for the first time, I'm approaching this larger project that I'd never done outside of, well, I mean, I'd written fan fiction before, but this felt different. It felt more, even though that's not the right word. In the earliest days, the days where you're Googling, how do I write a novel? How do I world build? How do I write a fantasy novel? And you're getting all of these things about, things to avoid. There's a lot of books on structure out there and a lot of information regarding structure, 3-act, 5-act, 7-act, whatever. And I was looking at these things and I just got sick to my stomach. I was like, this sounds awful. Like, I have been a reader for my entire life, and I'm someone who, I swear it's the result of the Mysterious Benedict Society, but it could just be, an endless circle. I'm really good at recognizing patterns. Pattern recognition is something I'm very, very good at, and imitating patterns is something else I'm good at. It turned into a larger feeling in my bones that I have now that storytelling is something that we've been doing for centuries. Every single person out there knows how to tell a story. Like, you get flipped off in traffic and then you go home and you tell your sister about it. Like, that's a story. You are telling a story. Gossiping is storytelling. And writing a novel is just a larger form of that. To look at that and to say, no, I need to break it up into little bitty pieces, felt like the wrong thing to do. And so I avoided all books on structure regarding I avoided all books that teach you how to be a better writer. And I would advise other writers to do the same, because I think that they're more harmful than helpful for early writers. If you are more established and you're interested in learning more, absolutely go for it. But I think a lot of these books, I don't mean to get off on this tangent, but I think a lot of these books give you so much information in the early stages, and information is actually not what you need. What you need is inspiration. So yeah, I don't know, maybe that's a hill I'll die on. But so writing The Last Paradise, started imitating the patterns that I'd seen over the last 2 decades. How I see writing novels, this is something that I talked about in a TikTok video. It's kind of like tromping through the woods and trying to beat down a path for yourself. The entire writing process is. And the first draft is you paving the path for the very first time. But you don't know what to wear when you're walking into the woods for the first time. You can make an educated guess that, you need longer pants because you don't want to brush against poison ivy, or, you need closed-toed shoes because of yada yada. But then you get in there and 50 feet in, you're in a briar patch and you're like, shit, I should have worn tougher pants. So you have to turn around, walk back out, get the tougher pants, and walk back in. By the time you get all the way to the end of the path, or by the time you make the loop or whatever, for the very first time, you're wearing an entire outfit of lessons learned. The second draft, you're walking back through, and slowly but surely you start beating down this path more and more until it's refined enough that other people can walk on it without, hurting themselves as well. My first briar patch was 6 weeks after starting The Last Paradise, and there was something something that was too similar to that, and I sat there in the middle of the rose bush and I was like, I have to rewrite it. So I turned around, stomped back out, had to get my tougher pants on, had to stomp back in, kept walking, kept stomping through this forest, and all of a sudden I come upon a tree trunk sometime in late December, and I realized, I gotta bring my axe with me. So I had to turn around, walk back out, get the axe, come back. And all of these are rewrites. This took me to January of 2022. I just Googled it today. 2022 was the year of the tiger. And it makes total sense that year was garbage for me. It was so bad. I mean, am I glad that everything happened? Yeah. I had not 1, not 2, but 3 friendship breakups within the first 4 months. Girls that I thought were going to be in my wedding, inevitably, whenever that may happen. It was 2 different friends. We were a group of 3, and I lost 2 of them. It was like late December, early January. And that is a loss I still carry with me. I'm grateful that it happened because I have grown as a person and I needed to grow. But the ghost of that grief is something that still lives with me. I'm not sad anymore, but when I remember that era, I am sad for myself, if that makes any sense. In March, I lost another friend. It was not a good time. It was not a good time. It was not. The poetry professor that I had taken the independent study with was my only poetry professor. I didn't take it with any other teachers. He was the professor that I liked, and I trusted him for several reasons. April of 2022, I get a phone call from a friend of mine that he is dating a girl that used to be our classmate. She graduated, 1 year after we did, and she had just walked at graduation, and I was forced to evaluate several instances in which I thought he had been flirting with me. And there was a vibe that I always rejected because I thought I was crazy. I was like, no, Sheridan, you're confusing academic validation with romantic validation, and that's not right, because this man is gay and he would never cross that line. And a year after I graduated, he crossed that line with another student. And then added to a group chat because we work quickly. And all 8 women in that group chat had experienced the same thing that I had. The same nudges from the foot under the table. The same, oh, he brushed his knee against mine. Oh, he winked at me, but it wasn't like that. Oh, it's because he's gay. So what if he wanted something from me the entire time and he was just stroking my ego so that he could get it? And what? Am I really talented? Am I really? And I hit rock bottom, and I stayed there for a while. And I know that I made something that wasn't about me, but I was processing, okay? And we tried to get her out. We tried to warn her. We were like, it doesn't matter. She was in a position, and she still is in a position where she doesn't want to listen, and they do seem truly happy now, and I'm happy for them, I guess. Still get angry sometimes, and the anger was the only thing that pulled me out, because I finally came to the conclusion that if I wasn't skilled, if it was a lie, it would not be a lie for long, because I would make it the truth, that I was talented and I was skilled and I was capable of doing this. During the rock bottom phase, I was watching Yellowstone, and I thought of a bodyguard romance that I really wanted to write, and so I wrote 3 chapters of that, but that was the extent of it. For 2.5 months, I wrote shit. I wrote nothing. And then one random fucking day, I woke up at the end of June, and I was like, we're not doing this anymore. And I set a deadline to finish the first draft of The Last Paradise before the novel's birthday, and I made it like 10 days shy. I finished it fast. I used that spite and that anger to carry me a lot farther than I should have, because it ate pieces of me from the inside out. It really did. But we gotta do what we gotta do. So the novel's first birthday came around, and I celebrated it with a cake, a tradition that I definitely recommend to any other writer out there. Celebrate the big things and the small. The day after, I was cat sitting for my friend Amber, and I was pacing around her kitchen, listening to Heat Stroke by Black Math on repeat. I couldn't stop picturing this fight scene that I could choreograph in my head. I wrote 8,000 words that night, and by the time she came back, I had 20 to 40,000 words of a pretty good first draft for this other series that I'm working on. And I wasn't really ready to return to The Last Paradise yet, but by the time I was ready to return to it in October, I printed it at the time. And I read through it, and it was awful. It was dog shit. It was horrible. And so all of the thoughts that had started in April about how I wasn't actually talented, I wasn't actually skilled, those started to swing back in. And I had a really hard time dealing with them. And so I read the novel from front to back, and then back to front, and I kept trying to make changes where I could, but nothing was working. Nothing could fix what felt like a foundational problem. In November, I went to Y'all Fest. I don't remember who it was. I'm better at taking notes now, but I didn't know any better. There was an author there that spoke on a panel about writing the first draft, and how whenever they write the first draft, they print it, they stick it in a drawer for 3 months, and then when the 3 months are over, they pull it out, they read the entire thing, they shred it, and then they delete the document from their computer, and then they delete their trash, and they start over from scratch. And everyone in the room justifiably gasped, but I just remember sitting there, and the courage of letting it go was something of theirs that really resonated with me. And I realized that somewhere along the line that I was going to have to do something like that. On the ride back from Y'all Fest, I am blessed to have friends that are as interested in The Last Paradise as they are. My friend Jess and I talked about it for literally 4 hours, and she still had questions to ask. But during this conversation, she made me realize that there was a side plot that was weighing the entire novel down, and it just needed to be deleted. And it took me a month to do it, but at the end of December, I finally managed it. I finally just scrapped 10,000 words from the novel, and this is actually when I took off on TikTok. A quick recap: I work for financial professionals, not for much longer. I actually just put my notice in because this isn't for me, and I found something else, and I'm really excited about it, and I can't wait to tell you more. But the part of the things that financial professionals do is they really like you to become a registered advisor so that you can do basically everything. And so I was taking these tests and studying for these tests to become a financial advisor in 2023. And I was studying for 6 to 8 weeks at a time, fail the test. Take a break, study for 6 to 8 weeks, fail the next test. And my last test was in October, and I failed it, and I've never cried relieved tears in my life, but I did on that day, because I knew after that I was done. That is going on while all of this other stuff is going on that I'm about to tell you. So because 2022 was so awful, I did not feel safe quitting nicotine in 2022. So I waited until 2023, specifically until the end of January, and I was like, you know what? We can do it now. We can do it now. We're not losing any more friends. We're not surprised when men are. At the same time, I stopped being mean about the writing process on my TikTok page, and it changed the way I write. I started making writing goals with my friend Jess in the middle of May. While all of this other stuff is going on, I'm quitting nicotine and I'm trying to study and take these tests. I spiral sometime in June and I have an absolute breakdown. In July, I'm still not writing, and I'm trying really hard to write, but nothing's coming out. And all of a sudden, Marcel drops into my DMs and she's like, hey, I don't know, like, we only just followed each other, and I don't know if this is weird, but I'd love to be your critique partner. I know that I'd be really interested in The Last Paradise. I was wondering if you'd be interested in the Elysian Hunt. It's about this and this and this and this and this. And we were both at the 15th chapter mark. Marcel was someone who did not know me outside of TikTok. She didn't have an obligation as my friend. I mean, she does now. You do now, if you're watching this. But she didn't back then, and she loved it. And she was like, oh my God, this is so good. And a part of me that had been hurt by all of the fears and all of the anxieties I'd had surrounding that poetry professor, surrounding that mentor, it started to heal. And I'm not phrasing this right, but I'm just really grateful. Her comments and justified criticisms, and I was like, oh my God, that's a great point. But, that doesn't make me a bad writer. They carried me all the way to the second draft's completion at the end of October. After I had already failed that third and final test. So I finished the second draft. I let it simmer. I started NaNoWriMo with a new work in progress that I'd had in mind since September 23rd, and I know that because it was my friend's birthday when I thought of it. Whopping 2 weeks before I was like, no, I know the big changes that I have to fix in The Last Paradise, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to change them. So the third draft was fixing the larger level issue and going through chapter by chapter, yes, but the primary goal is to fix the things that I already knew existed because I'd seen them cropping up in the second draft. So I'd kept my eye on these things for a while. So I fixed those issues, and finishing that draft carried me to early mid-December. I sent the draft to Marcel and other beta readers, and while I waited for their notes to come back, I turned around and I started zero drafting the second book in the series, which has a really good title, and I can't wait to tell you guys what it is. I finished that zero draft in about a month, and about half of my beta readers had come back with notes so far, and a lot of them said a lot of similar things, so I went ahead and printed it, and I just started doing my own read through, seeing what I could pick up. I read through it, making larger level changes in blue pen, sensory specific things in green pen, and lower level issues in red pen, and then anything that was really good got a blue highlighter. Oh, I have the draft here. This is page 96 to page 445. This is an atmospheric and world building read through that it just to cover some inconsistencies that I noticed in my own process. Next goals are specifically an adjective and adverb pass through, because I'm just a girl and I'm noticing a problem. And then repetitive word use. I've been collecting a list on repetitive words for the last 2 drafts, and I'm going to go through and check every single one of those off, but that's not going to be like a printed draft. The goal is to start querying by the end of March. That has always been the goal, and I'm really glad that we are still on track for that. But that is the entire comprehensive history of The Last Paradise and my relationship with it. Yeah. It's getting dark. I may need to turn the light on. But would I do this again? No. We actually are going to turn the light on. This looks like the scene in The Incredibles. I feel like this is good. Going back to the walking through the forest metaphor, I have already walked that path one time, and I have my outfit of lessons learned. The next time I jump into a first draft, it will not ever look like The Last Paradise's first draft ever again. And the debut is constantly learning lessons. My metaphorical outfit of lessons learned. I have my beekeeping mask on, I have my gloves, I have my satchel with my anti-venom in it to protect me from the snakes, and I have my like near Teflon pants on. I've got my steel-toed boots. Like, we are good. I'm also carrying an axe with me because this is just a really intense process. The issues that were created as a result of me not having that outfit during the first draft of The Last Bit, those issues will never come up again. The best way for me to do this is to use something that you guys have already seen. So I'm going to use the general plot of the let's go with the romance novel that I just recently created. The general plot, from what I remember of the romance novel that I plotted on the mirror on TikTok, our female main character gets a call from a guy really needing a place to stay. She has these cabins that you can rent in the middle of the woods. He's like, everybody's booked out. I'm just looking to stay for a month. My previous place canceled. Like, can I come stay? And she's like, yeah, sure. It's just the month price is this. Blah, blah, blah. He decides to pay it. And she's like, cool. This guy also sounded hot as fuck over the phone. I can't wait to meet him. He gets there, and he is as hot as she thought he was going to be, which is devastating news for her, a woman who's trying to remain a professional. Somewhere in the midst of that, everyone else is like leaving. I think it's the holidays. It could be around Christmas. And they get snowed in, and the power in his cabin goes out. And so she goes to him and she's like, hey, listen, I have a generator. And he's freezing, actually, but he's not going to admit that. And she says, I have a generator, but it's only for the main house. Like, come stay in this huge ass fucking house with me. So he moves in with her. And her dog and cat, who don't like anybody, like him. And they have to coexist in the snowed in, generator only, like, log cabin until they can like clear the roads and fix the electricity, which is gonna take a while. So they have to play board games, and they have to do this and they have to do that. But what we don't know, well, maybe we do know because I think this will be dual POV, is that he's a contract killer who is currently in trouble with the contract killing company because they wanted him to murder a kid and he wouldn't do it. And so he's now currently hiding from them, while also trying to kill the person who put out the kill order on him. And they find him. And matter. It really doesn't matter. But all of those things that I just listed off are plot points. Those, like, you lay all of those out, that's a plot arc, babe. The people show up, that's like just before the climax, because the climax is always the point where the character has to make a decision that they don't want to make. And you know, our broody, mysterious contract killer who is like, no, I'm not gonna let anything bother me, like, I really care about her, but it's not going to change the mission. She gets kidnapped, it changes the fucking mission. That's the climax. Whenever I'm approaching a new book, what I do is I do those plotting and outlining scenes that you guys see on, you know, TikTok and on here. And then all of those scenes that are so exciting to me in the moment, I write those first. And when I write those, that is the zero draft. And it's approximately like 20 to 30,000 words. And then I go back through it and I look at it on a bullet pointed list form. I look at all the pieces and I'm like, okay, what's too close together? If these two things occurred side by side, the readers would get whiplash. And filling in those pieces, that adds your subplots, right? So going back through and filling in all these holes so that the readers aren't getting whiplash from the main plot, adding in your subplots completes your first draft. So that takes you to about 60 to 70,000 words. It depends on how in-depth you are with it. I'm personally not, because of the thing that comes next, which is doing a reverse outline. And I think I mentioned this earlier, but I'm not sure if I did. The reverse outline is, if an outline is where you talk about what you're going to talk about, a reverse outline is where you talk about what you already talked about. And so it's a synopsis, a bullet-pointed synopsis of the story you're currently working with. The other thing that I just want to add in really fast is that when you're doing that initial zero draft and you're just word vomiting these things out, you're going to accidentally add subtle details like, you know, she has a dog and the dog has a specific kind of collar, or he has a busted pocket watch in his duffel bag. And you have no idea why those things are in there. But when you go back in to it and you look at those holes that are missing, you can turn back to those smaller pieces and start answering those questions and expanding on the smaller things that have already made their presence known in the larger things. Don't second guess yourself during the zero draft. There's no point. There's no point. You'll talk yourself into a hole and then you won't write anything. And I say you, this is about my writing process, not yours, but put it in bullet point form and then move the bullets. And then when you have something that makes sense to your brain, go back through it again, and depending on how many things you have to move around, you could enter the same draft again, or you could do what I had to do for The Last Paradise, and you could start from page 1 at 0 words. Start the whole thing fucking over again. Rewriting now looks different than it did for The Last Paradise because the rewriting for The Last Paradise was the whole thing. But the thing they have in common is the standard belief that you don't have to honor the story the way you told it the first time around. You don't have to walk the path in the forest that you decide to stomp through the first time, because you get to the end of the path and you realize, damn, there was actually a shortcut back there and I didn't take it and I should have. Going back through and taking that shortcut, that's rewriting. Or going back and taking the long way around because you're like, the long way around's a lot prettier. I want to take the long way around. That's the rewriting process. My video deleted itself. These are the resources that I use while I'm writing. I just want to rehash that I do believe inspiration is more important than anything else in the early stages. And if you think that you will get inspired reading about structure and how to use structure, you should do that. You should do that. If you're reading the books on structure because you want to figure out how to do it right, maybe skip that. Or avoiding right versus wrong because they don't exist. Trusting your own intuition in terms of how to tell the story is half the game. You gotta trust it. You gotta trust yourself. Humans have been telling stories since around the time we learned how to harness fire. It's literally in our blood. And if you didn't know how to tell a story, you would not be here watching this video today. It is in your blood. Just go write the fucking thing. I love you. Sorry. There are resources that I like that do not have to deal with structure that have helped me during the process. Resources that I personally find invaluable based on my experience in my own life, okay? The first one is the Writers Helping Writers series. The entire thing. I can personally vouch for the Emotion Thesaurus and the Emotional Wound Thesaurus. The inner pages of those look like this. This is the Emotional Wound Thesaurus. And this is the Emotion Thesaurus. Every single thing that you could possibly imagine. This is the table of contents. Yeah. The next is writing with color on Tumblr. So it's writingwithcolor.tumblr.com, source for creating characters that are ethnically, racially, and religiously diverse from you. So if you look like me, you should be using that resource. A world building question of the day on Tumblr is another one, wbqott.tumblr.com. They have stopped posting the questions, but they have a document that you can access linked on their Tumblr page that shows you every single question that they've ever asked. And it's over 1,000. I think it's over 2,000 actually. So if you struggle with world building because you don't know what questions to ask yourself, go look at that resource. And then Tumblr in general. I feel like so many people just neglect Tumblr because so many screenshots have been moved over onto Pinterest and we're just pinning them on boards. Stop. There's something uniquely inspirational about Tumblr in a way that I cannot explain. And you have to be on the website in order to, or on the app in order to experience it. It doesn't hit the same reading the screenshot rather than the post. And then the last thing, which has helped me the most in this entire process, is drumroll, reading. Nothing taught me more than reading. Nothing. So go pick up a book in your genre and read it critically. I'm not saying like, oh, my English lit professor asked me why the light is green or the door is blue or, you know, there's a bird in the cage. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about reading something and looking at it and saying, oh my God, I'm in love with this. Okay, why? Why am I in love with this? Pick it apart. Pick it apart. I'm not saying dissect it. I'm just saying be specific. Don't just sit there and be like, oh my God, I love this. Be specific about it. Why do you like it? And then take those pieces and try to mimic it in your own writing, because writing something that you have already established you love helps you stay inspired. Actual services that I use in order to write, there are so many things out there. I have tried Milanote, I have tried Obsidian, there are like 15 others that I've given a go. Nothing hit like campfire writing. Nothing hit like campfire writing. And I have templates if you want to use them. These are the things that I like the most, the things that I feel I need to know in order to understand my characters at a very deep level. And I basically use this as my encyclopedia, and I build, you know, all of the information necessary. You can write in campfire writing, but I physically write the book in Scrivener, which I do love and I do adore. There are some issues with exporting, but I think it's just because I haven't learned how to do it properly yet. Noveler for about, I think it's 2 years now. I think it'll be 3 years. No, 2 years in June. Noveler will be 2 years in June. Their analytics are insane. So if you're interested in learning how much you're writing on a daily basis versus a weekly basis versus a monthly basis and what time you like to write best at and all of this information, use Noveler. To remain inspired are the holy trifecta, Pinterest, Spotify, and Tumblr. One last thing that I touched on, but I didn't expand on it, is how my relationship with my writing process changed when I started talking about it differently. And I've said this before on my TikTok, but it's worth repeating in longer form that when you talk negatively about something, especially if you're a content creator, that is not going to be good for you. And I was trying to build a community of like-minded writers and readers. Started whining, oh, I hate my main character, I hate this, I hate that. And granted, all of the other things that I just listed in this video were also going on, but at the same time, it wasn't doing me any good at all to talk about these things, because I was not only forcing myself to think of the negative idea, I had to then go find a sound for it, I had to film it, then I had to listen to myself talk about it. As I was editing the video, I was listening to my own voice complain about how much I hated the writing process. That did nothing good for me. If you are venting about something that you're struggling with writing, that's different. But if you're talking about, oh, writing's hard, I don't want to do it. If you talk about writing like it's difficult, it's going to be difficult. You spoke it into existence. I think that that's the last of my rant, but this is the everything videos. These are my most frequently asked questions, and I hope I answered all of them. If there's anything else that you're interested in knowing, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'm happy to answer more, but I think I got everything. I hope I did. If you guys need me, holler, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for watching this. This is the most vulnerable thing I think I'll ever put on the internet, so thank you for, yeah. And I love you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Happy writing. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.